Hi, I'm Katie. This is KatieBugKnit, and this is my channel where I talk about all things knitting, crochet, and I have a lot of fun things going on this month in July of 2025. So we're going to kick off July with a traditional knitting podcast, and I'm going to talk about a couple finished objects and some works in progress. And then at the end, I'll give you a little bit of a garden update if you'd like to stick around for that. But grab your knitting and meet me back here. First things first, we're going to start with finished objects. And my very first finished object that I'm going to talk to you about today is my Meridian Striped Tee. This is one that I'm very excited about because I'm trying to find a nice way to hold it. This is my first sweater finish of the year of 2025. This is the second sweater that I've made out of Marie Greene's book, Seamless Knit Sweaters in 2 Weeks. And I definitely recommend this book if you are new to knitting sweaters. I believe the book is around $16 on Amazon. I think I bought it. It might be more than that. It's anywhere from 16 to 20. Definitely worth it. There's so many great patterns. I've definitely talked about it in some of my past podcasts, and there's several patterns that I'll probably make from the book, but I have realized that it's definitely a good book for me starting out to make sweaters. The very first sweater I have ever knit was the Flax Sweater by Tin Can Knits, and then now the next two have been from Marie Greene's book. So Marie Greene, her book, it kind of holds your hand through it. It gives you different stitch counts as you're working along. So as you're doing the increases before the next step, she'll have a little blurb that says something. You should have so many stitches on your needles. So then you can double check your stitch counts before you get to the next step. Obviously, you can do this with any pattern if you're following along and counting your stitches, but it's very handy for beginner knitters. And even the short row shaping in the back of the sweater was not overwhelming to me. It was very easily explained. I think the way my brain works, I like very detailed instructions. Once I am more comfortable with knitting, I'm sure I will be able to figure out stuff a lot easier and faster. But since I'm fairly new to sweater knitting, I really appreciate the more hand holding, I guess is what you could say. So I love this book, and let's talk a little bit about this sweater. When I started knitting this sweater, I was imagining a cozy, oversized, wear it around with little knit leggings around the house in the winter and the fall. Just something to throw on and be cozy in. And this has definitely fit the bill. It's oversized. I made a size 5, which was like 46, 48 inches across the chest. I actually should measure it to see how big it actually is. Maybe I'll measure it for you and put the measurements on the screen, because I don't know if I actually checked my gauge after it was all said and done, because I have blocked it, and it's acrylic yarn. It's acrylic yarn that I bought from Knit Pics on their summer sale last year, and it is a recycled acrylic yarn that I think I got it for like $4 a ball, and I bought 7 balls, but I only used 5.5, I believe. I had originally thought about putting the stripes on the arms. I do like the way that looked, but I just decided that would kind of limit what I wear it with, or what I wear it for. and I didn't really want to do that. I wanted to just do plain first. I might make another one. I might make another one that's more fitted. This is really cozy. I do kind of wish, because when I did the neckline, I had just separated for sleeves, not bind it off. That's probably what I would do if I were to redo it. Go ahead and do it, but not bind it off. Although then you have an extra ball of yarn attached to the top of the sweater. Anyway, I digress. This sweater is what I wanted it to be, and I think that might be all the details. I didn't really do any alterations to it other than I made the sleeves. I probably made the sleeves a little bit longer. I didn't measure them. I just know my arms are pretty long, and I have a long torso, so I definitely made it longer than the pattern. Um, but yeah, I really love how it worked up. And that is my first finished sweater of the year. I would like to get some more sweaters under my belt. And this year I am trying to knit some more. In a minute, we'll talk about what I have on the needles currently. But before we do that, let's talk about my other finished objects. So I don't have them with me because they were all gifted. And I bet you could guess what they are. If you've watched for a little bit, I like to knit socks. I showed off my unicorn party socks on the last video, the last podcast. And those actually, I was worried about them being too small. They were not. So yay. They fit perfect. I just only thing I had to do was sew in the ends, and they were ready to gift. The next finished sock was the March Cuff Club sock, and I used the opal yarn that was inspired by Van Gogh's sunflower painting. And that yarn, I used that for the main portion of the sock. And then I also used a stroll tweed. I believe it's like Lake Lost Heather. And then I used the stroll white. And I did on the heel, I did double the yarn. So I used both the Lake Lost Heather and the white for the very bottom of the heel. It's a heel flap and gusset. And my pattern that I use for most of those are the Extranilla vanilla sock pattern. And I'll put it later on in the video. I'll share that pattern with you. I use that one a lot for most of my sock knitting. So that one I finished up the second toe and was able to gift those. And then the last finished sock of the year so far, which comes to a total of 8 so far this year, is the Knit Pics Filicini. It's when they had the really skinny stripes, and it was the 100-gram ball of their self-striping yarn. And the colorway was concession stand. And then I used the Dogwood Heather Stroll Tweed for the cuffs, heels, tufts, and coats. So heels, tufts, heels, heels, cuffs, and toes. Oh my goodness, I can't talk today. So those were also finished, gifted, and sent on their way. But I have pictures, so you can see the pictures of them. They were loved by all their recipients, and it was just fun to be able to give a gift of handmade while they were here to visit me. So that is all of my finished objects. Okay, let's move on to the next portion of our video, and that is works in progress. All right, first work in progress is my Wisteria Tank by Joan Ho. Now this, if you know what the Wisteria Tank looks like, you would be like, that's not a Wisteria Tank. It is ribbed. So I started doing the ribbing, And I have watched other videos where people talked about cotton hurting their hands, but I'd never experienced it because I rarely knit with cotton. In the past, I've crocheted washcloths with cotton, but it's different when you're knitting with it. So this was my first experience knitting with cotton, and I found out that it hurts my hands to knit with cotton. So I got about an inch of the ribbing done and then decided that I don't need to rib the whole tank. So this is kind of going to be an experimental project. So I don't want to rip, I didn't want to rip it out. I just want to keep going because I do like the fabric. If you can see, the fabric is, okay, one thing about this yarn is that the weight changes because it's hand spun. So it goes from pretty bulky spots to perfect for the weight that I need. And then there's long strands where it's just a thread. So it has a lot of texture, which would be beautiful in a baby blanket. I think that this yarn, it's so soft, and I love that it's so natural. So it's Ethiopian cotton, and it's dyed with plant-based um, dye. So it's indigo, and which is a plant, and cosmos, which is a plant. So this would be a fabulous baby blanket. It would also make some really good washcloths in the kitchen. So there's a lot of great things you could do with this yarn. I do think that it's going to make a pretty tank, and I'm going to continue working with it, and we're going to see what we end up with. But I think for now, without the ribbing, it feels like it's going to be big. So what I am thinking about doing is when I start working up the side. So maybe I'll start doing the decreases because I don't want to do them very often, but I do want to decrease so that I can get to the size before this one. And I can't remember what size I'm knitting currently. I'll share it on the next podcast. Hopefully I'll be a lot further along. But it's 24 stitches less than what I have on my needles right now. So I will just, at some point, there'll be 12 rounds where I decrease on each side, and I'll mark it so that I have stitch markers on each side of my body, and that's where I think that'll be the least noticeable if I just have a few decreases. And I'm thinking if I start spacing them out, this is about halfway done with the body before I what do you call it? Start working front and back. So I'll work flat for the front part and the back part, I think. And then I think the way you do it is Kitchener, the shoulders, but I'm not exactly sure. I think that's how the pattern goes. I haven't made it to that part yet. So that is my plans for this. I still think it's going to be a great top. I prefer to have a tank top, but in the end, if it doesn't work out, I'll probably frog it and save this yarn because I'll be done working with it. Save it for another project. I guess I'm taking this as a lesson in learning about what the fabric of my garment is going to look like. And I actually really like the way this looks. But I am curious what it's going to look like on as a tank top. So follow along. We'll see. Hopefully I'll have a lot more progress before the next podcast. I do buy a lot of Knit Pics, and I really love their Felici yarn. I like the stripes. So if you guessed socks for my second work in progress, you are right. I like to have a pair of socks on the needles, and I had pretty much got all the socks off my needles. So I like to only have one pair. Sometimes I have two. It's nice to have both of them going at once because then you don't get second sock syndrome, because then I do one color stripe and then I set it down and pick up the other one to do the other color stripe and keep them in tandem that way. And they're a lot easier to mirror each other. So I cannot remember this colorway. It's an old colorway. I've had this one for a long time. It makes me think of hamburgers. I think these might end up being my socks just because I wear knitted socks more than anybody in my family. And my last Knit Pics Felici ones that I knit are starting to get old. And this is like a workhorse sock for me. I wear them a lot, so I will probably make these for me. Unless someone changes my mind before I get done with the foot. So we'll see. I prefer, I know there's a lot of people that will like magic loop, or you can knit your socks so many different ways. That's the beauty of it. You can pick which kind of way you like knitting the best. I prefer the 9-inch circulars because I feel like that way I don't get the ladders on each side of my socks. I do not mind the shorties. I actually prefer it. And my theory is that I was knitting socks before I was knitting sweaters, and I started knitting socks on circulars, on 9-inch circulars. So I think it's because before I knew any better, I was doing this, and this is kind of how I learned, and that's what feels natural to me. So this is what I like. That is all my works in progress. And if you are only here for the knitting, thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to see more, please make sure you're subscribed because I have lots of exciting things coming up in this month in July. If you want to see the garden, well, let's talk about it. It has grown so much in the month of June. It has rained so much in the month of June, and which I love. I would rather the sky water the garden than me any day. Like it, I would prefer not to be. I would rather come out to the garden in the rain and pick stuff than be watering in the heat. But that's changing because now we're moving further into the summer, and I'm sure we'll get a lot more sunny, hot days now that July is here. So as far as the garden, my snap peas are pretty much done for the season. There might be a few left here or there. Those are an early spring thing. I have already picked my cauliflower. I picked it pretty small just because I didn't want it to get bugs, ruin it, or anything else. Everything's just growing right now. The flowers are kind of stealing the show right now. My astelbes are looking beautiful. My daisies are opening up. My black-eyed Susans are opening up. And I even have a few little sunflowers starting to, I had a sunflower open up, and I have several that are like getting taller. And in the past, I've had very tall sunflowers. And most of the sunflowers that are in the garden right now have been planted by the squirrels or just seeds falling off of their of the sunflowers that grew there last year. So it's kind of fun to see where they pop up. I do like to plant them, but sometimes planting seeds for sunflowers in the spring, the rabbits will tend to eat the plants because they're some of the very first ones that sprout, and apparently sunflower sprouts are really good. We had a pretty good strawberry season. The rabbits did eat a few of them, and the rain kind of messed up a little bit at the end. I haven't checked them in a while, but I think they're pretty much done. There might be a few left, but they might be about done. I just feel like everywhere in the garden, progress has been made for sure, but there's always something more I want to do. I just can't ever be done with it. Like it's never ending. I guess like knitting, there's always a new project I want to work on, and that seems to be the way it is in the garden as well. If you stayed through to the end for the gardening update, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate each one of you that puts thumbs up or writes a comment. I absolutely love reading your comments. And anyone that subscribes, it really helps my channel. So if you liked what you saw, please subscribe and share and like. Do all the things. And I appreciate it. All right, guys. Happy knitting. See you next time.